Hello, everyone. Welcome to Miami Beach Urban Studios Live Art Talk. I'm Colette Mello, and I'm excited to be here today with fellow FIU alumni and Miami-based photographer Ivan Santiago. I'd like to give a shout out and a thank you to the City of Miami Beach, Department of Tourism, and Office of Cultural Affairs for their continued support of the arts. Ivan Santiago is a photographer whose work is rooted in the tropical concrete jungle we know as Miami. With his contemplative eye and attention to detail, Ivan is able to capture the extraordinary from the ordinary. His work has been exhibited throughout the world, including Germany, Spain, and Poland. Here in South Florida, Ivan's photographs have been part of exhibitions at the Bailey Contemporary, Dimensions Variable, and the Art and Cultural Center of Hollywood. The exhibition, These Places That Once Were Seen, Photography by Ivan Santiago, just opened at the Design Gallery at Miami Beach Urban Studios. In the exhibition, Ivan explores Miami's endless industrial structures such as highways, vacant parking lots, overhead passes, sound barrier walls. He uncovers hidden geometric forms, lines, grids, reputation, and wrappings. His work hints at the traditions of Ansel Adams, Catherine Opie, and Christo. Ivan received his MFA from Florida International University, and he's an adjunct art professor.
Can everybody hear me okay? Awesome. Okay, so also a big thank you to MBUS for sponsoring this, and a special thanks to Colette for helping me produce the show, and definitely to John for believing in a photography show at the gallery. Let me share my screen and get started here. Okay, can I get a thumbs up if you guys could see this okay and hear me? Good.
We can see it. It's perfect.
And also, speaking of shout outs, definitely a shout out to all of the School of Photography at FIU. That was definitely a learning experience. I had my colleagues and professors from Bill McGuire to Peggy Nolan, Gloria O'Connell, the Del Valles. They sort of always taught us to not believe in the assumption that a photograph is real, but that to focus on the thing itself, which is always a mantra at FIU, not to really concern yourself with what's happening outside of the frame. And sort of as a student of the medium, I always thought the greatest gift of photography was that it was a form that you could always see its flaws, and that you really would appreciate real life more than the actual image. So this is the title of the show, These Places That Once Were Seen. It's I would suppose a proper landscape photography show. The title in its simplest term alludes to a theme of dualism that I've been fascinated with for a long time. And I always sort of try to spell that out in my artist statements, but this dualism is about being present in an often ignored or disregarded space or place. And so some of you know me from other sort of forms of photography. I have been doing photography for a long time, and I'm a sort of jack of all trades in the rich world of photography. And so I wear a commercial hat. I'm a huge fan of street photography. And, on weekends, you'll often find me chasing around the kids with a camera. But I suppose what gives me the most solace is this sort of meditative and quality of pulling out the tripod legs and standing in front of these places and really just seeking out this sort of location of true banality. And because I'm sort of a student of art history, I wanted to take us back to what kind of it's inspired me to get here, because I'm not really operating in a bubble, of course. So this is just to give us a sort of context of how I frame them and the sizes for scale. This is the actual show. Please try to see it in real life, not virtually like we are right now, but virtual is fine. This is one side of the wall at the gallery. It's on the 4th floor at 420 Lincoln Road, and you're welcome to go there. Please wear a mask.
It is in the design gallery and we're open Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. And we are taking appointments. If you'd like to come by at another time, we would love to have you. It will also be featured in the Miami Beach Culture Crawl, which is the 3rd Thursday in October, which is October 21st. So we'll be open till 8 o'clock that evening with the event. So we hope to see you all there.
Thank you for those details. And it's open till October something.
It's open till October 29th.
Okay, cool. Happy Halloween. All right.
Yes.
So there's the other wall, and there's a few that I didn't show, so I didn't want to tease it completely. So spoiler alert, these are some of the images, but of course, the devil is in the details with these. Okay, so I wanted to start with sort of like I said, the context of the work, my early work. And I feel like the history of landscape art in this sort of traditional general sense is certainly, to a certain extent, rather, a history of finding a place that is psychologically ecstatic and a place where one can stand and share this showcase, this vista, where there's an area for one to display your powerful scenes of weather and detail and brush stroke and stuff like that. So I think that the tradition comes from trying to showcase these kind of like rich natural phenomena. And of course, this is the work of Joseph Turner, a British watercolorist and oil painter from the mid 19th century. And for sure in France, the work of Gustav Le Gray, who was a photographer, was definitely launching off of that style and created his own seascapes in photography. And I think that what I had an affinity to both of these works was this sort of water world that they both inhabited. In spectacular form, here we have Le Gray's Great Wave in France, and this the light in both Turner and Le Gray is very Mediterranean and echoes a lot of this South Florida light that we see here. And so I think that with a lot of landscape art, there's this universality of geometric form, which is things placed and lay in this like long, typically horizontal geometric form. And so fast forward to modernists, and I was very interested in this many different kind of modernist arts, and I was obviously interested in Mondrian. We'll see in my work, hopefully, if it's new to you. Minimalists, and obviously Mark Rothko and his provoking colors, and how also this universality of like shapes laying on top of each other, and the tension of color next to each other with this color field paintings, very abstract expressionists. And another sort of formidable moment in my childhood, I probably was like 8 or 9, is my parents driving over the causeway and seeing these large scale installations of the husband and wife Christo team, and seeing the parallels later on in art school, where I was seeing that they were in fact wrapping different buildings, and in this case, a gallery in France, as part of their conceptual art. And I tried to sort of parallel that, and later on you'll see with some of my fumigation termite tents that I photograph a lot of. And then there's the history of photography, which I've already mentioned. We got a lot of that in undergrad, and I was fascinated by the work of Burton and Hilla Betcher, another husband and wife team that, they were famous for repeating these forms of these industrial facades, and they would always print it at the same scale. And they definitely were the pioneers of what would become the main motivation for a lot of my early work, which is, one more artist that I forgot to mention, which is Walker Evans, who was doing this sort of in the US, in the Midwest and in the southern rural areas. Walker Evans is very well known for his storefront facades that he would also pioneer those very true to form landscapes in the US. And these are part of his series from American Photographs, which is a very strong body of work. So now, again, I'm not mentioning everything because that would be crazy, but these are like important moments in what I would become my language, which is the new topographics in the early 70s. This, of course, is Ed Ruscha's parking lots. He's famous for the every store in the Sunset Strip. And just this new topographics departed from using nature as its primary driving force and went with this man-altered imagery. And all of them, Stephen Shore and Robert Adams, had this really exact defining deadpan sort of photography, which was just really beautiful. And finally, the work of Louis Baltz, who, again, this universality of geometric forms and falling on this horizontal plane and making what to me is very abstract expressionist, but photography. So that's just a pause there. The work of Louis Baltz and Ed Ruscha and others, it was the first time I saw like this, that you can do something that showed a dystopian vantage point. And I basically launched from there and wanted to do my own. So the next body of work is very early photography that I started doing in undergrad school. So I'll try to go through it a little quicker. So obviously now we're seeing how I'm using the same sort of structure and language of the new topographics to use it in local South Florida, and this interest in the geometry and universality of objects falling on this horizon line and playing with these new sort of surreal encounters that I would discover and use them over and over, like doors, stairs, street lines, and the way cars make oil spills, and new pavement that's been dropped down onto the black paint of the pavement. So all these things started to become interesting features for me. I don't know if you see my mouse, but to me, like when this haphazard moment of like a graffiti being painted over and creating that sort of Mark Rothko moment became of interest of me. So I would search and consciously and unconsciously find these very plain, minimal moments, but the novelty of these little things that were, I thought, unique to Miami would sort of make it worth standing and capturing. And you guys, if you want to unmute and ask questions about it, that's cool too.
I did put, if you guys, anyone has any questions or comments, to put them in the chat below. Can I ask you a little bit about your process on how do you find these images? Are you driving, or?
Sure, that's a good
Are
question.
you scouting for them, or is it accidental?
Both. It's luck, accidents. This is a commute. Some of you might even recall or recognize this as 8th Street on the way to FIU. It's probably changed to a certain extent. I'm sure that tree is much larger now, but depending on where I would stand and how much, like, this is a process that's just obviously about reducing and minimalizing something that is inherently full of action, and back to the process. That one thing that you should all know is I do like not do this out of the window of a car. I'll get out, I'll stand there with a tripod just to get the most depth of field and clarity out of it, which is something that a lot of documentary photographers would do just to get that precision and clarity. So yeah, this is 8th Street, and just like, little details of reduction and stripping away color and shape.
Do you remember, I was thinking of your work today, and I remember reading an essay about, I think it was from Tony Smith, about driving in his car in the Jersey Turnpike. And it made me think of your work, that you're, the architecture of the car, and you're just,
Well, that's certainly something that definitely is part of the process, is me driving around for sure. But then I started to like the language of automobile culture comes out because there's no escaping it in these sort of malls and storefronts. The parking, we're such a commuter town, and so the car is super important. So I start to add cars, which you'll see later in this slideshow, or here's a car wash. And I'm also interested in rain and moisture and stuff like that, in the way that Le Gray or Turner would want to produce water in their images, because we're so surrounded here in this tropical landscape. This is a car wash that probably no longer exists in the Grove. And this idea of getting as minimal as possible, I did that till for a while, and I started to want to do something different. So after many years of black and white and learning this language of these signs and arrows and different icons that I could produce, I started to do it in color. And I found like there's just certain things that would not have photographed well in black and white. So the minute that I started loading, oh, by the way, this is all filmed so far. And once I start, you have to commit to the role. And so I started to commit more often than not to color. And then I wanted to do the same sort of formula of like these flat and very geometric forms, but like some kind of novelty thing to make it sort of speak of our city somehow. And so this is like probably a flower vendor that dumped all of his flowers or something. And this is off US 1. And so I felt like after this, I really wanted to do color. But what I found with color is that I could actually strip a lot of the color in the color by way of, just simply framing and composition. I could just create these illusions of monotone and yet have a little splash of color. And I just like this one here in that it's about copies, and there's like 3 or 4 guys in suits walking around. So it's very subtle, but when you look at the actual detail of the print large, you could see all that stuff. So it's about just deadpan, plain. I consider myself a 3rd generation new topographics photographer that's just working in South Florida. So I'm very much inspired by the work I was sharing before. And again, stripped down to like, where can I stand where it's about making it as simple and minimal as possible, but have like little echoes of nature through the shadows or something. So there's a shadow of a palm tree, and then these like tracks of a car and oil and wheels, stains and doors. These all become like part of the series. During the early growth spurt of Doral, I was out there before it was the Doral that it is today, and I was photographing these areas that are now unrecognizable by any sense. So this is early Doral walls with oil spills and ladders and color. Cars certainly did not prevent me from photographing. I like a little lonely car in the image. Another Doral image, another Doral. That's also Doral. I found that I could hit like a very new area with that city as it was being built back in early 2000s.
I like the way you capture all the grids and the lines and, definitely the minimalist language.
Yeah, and that's just prefab, splendor right there.
Right. The subdued colors. Yeah.
And then to the point of Cristo, obviously living here, you've all have seen that termite fumigation is a ritual in this area of South Florida. And so I was like, wow, this is like so Cristo. Let me start to catalog these quick and very, these are usually up for 24 hours. So it became like a practice of like learning where they were from friends and then rushing over and photographing them at the right light and then creating a whole grid of these things. And so like early undergrad, this is how I would display the work, very Becher-like, and I would just put them all together in a grid. And I felt like they sort of lost their identity and it became a bigger sort of a conceptual art project. I still enjoyed the detail. I knew that they were certainly something that you could blow up, but putting it this way became like this other sort of animal. And so now fast forward to the newer work where, yes, I mean, I do all sorts of different types of photography, but in this sort of series, here I am sort of more looking and departing from that more rigid formalism. I know this still seems very super formal, but I'm trying to see more open spaces and other risks with geometry that I could make, but still maintain a sort of very minimal approach. And I just loved getting to this place where we were looking for some furniture and there was this really fresh pavement and it just captured it at the right time. But most of these places you're not really allowed to sneak into. So this was a nice happy accident that I was there with the camera. But what I'm hoping to do with the more current work that's this is now like the last 10 years photography is I'm very interested.
Pardon me. Do you travel with your camera in your trunk? So you're always
It's I don't tell anybody. It's not
and your tripod.
Yeah, no, the tripod's always in the trunk. The camera, it depends where I'm going, but yeah.
Okay. It's just so you're ready if you catch that shot. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've had my car broken into, so
Nice.
So I really fascinated also with the simulation of photography. So I'll rephotograph when I see photographs on objects like storefronts. And so, yes, it's still a lot of this pure geometry, but I'm trying to like just open up a little bit. This is a project that I'm super into, which is these flora and fauna iconography that you find in these hieroglyphic sort of under turnpikes and different highway sound barriers. I think they're completely outrageous and I love the repetition. So I've been shooting under highways a lot. Or anytime there's like this reflective quality from too much rain and construction. And then I started to get very into night photography over the last few decades. And so the novelty here is places that I feel like will close and are like not gonna survive the mom and pops that don't survive the big monopolies. And also a huge fan of Eugene Ajax's French mannequins. So anytime I see really interesting storefronts that, in photography, you could make these figures look alive just by virtue of the stillness of it. But super fascinated with storefronts that have mannequins. I've been doing that for a little bit too. I don't, I haven't abandoned the pure geometry of this series, but I look for other sort of nuanced things like shadows and people in the photos. Again, the walls with imagery of nature, even though this is the least natural place on the planet. This is off of the I-95 going north. Bus stops, it's hard to tell in this slide, but there's like a palm tree on the surface of the glass. Interiors, exteriors, reflection. If you miss people in my photographs, here's the one of very little photographs that have people in it. So enjoy the people. I'm not trying to not shoot people, but I am seeking sort of a emptiness. So when I could get away with people, I'll definitely do it.
I have a couple questions. Ivan, I have one asking about the film format you're using for your works. And then also, how has the pandemic affected your practice?
Oh, it made it easier to find these spaces. Although I haven't gotten to post-pandemic work, so I'm just gonna scroll through. Actually, no, this is before the pandemic. This is the Museum of Science that now is not there anymore. The old location off of South Miami. So I shoot a lot of film, but then I'm also at this point, what the pandemic has done is forced me to shoot digital just to get results a lot quicker. Although now many film processing locations have sprung up because it's in vogue to a certain extent, and film is on its comeback, I think. But I just liked the camera, the square camera, and that's why a lot of these are square. So the ones that are rectangle coming up are mostly large format digital and some standard DSLR. I like the square because it makes the frame equal, and I think there's something really nice about not having that overtly horizontal landscape look. So that I don't really have this idea that film is like necessarily like, oh, it's so much better and that's what you have to use. It just happened to be that I was getting great results, and I do enjoy the way it renders color, and I do enjoy this format. So I loaded a lot of film to this specific camera, but I'm certainly not opposed to digital. So I actually use it all the time, digital. And
How
this is
has, sorry, go ahead.
this is Tropical Park, and palm tree sprouting right out of next to a light post right out of the concrete was kind of spectacular for me.
Where was that? Do you remember?
This one or the next one?
No, this one, the palm tree.
This is a Tropical Park. Really
Tropical Park. We have another question about how, I mean, you mentioned your practice, how the pandemic affects your practice, but also how did it affect your teaching?
Oh man, good question. I went remote, and there's nothing like face to face. And I don't know. I think my students probably are hating it, but I do my best. I try to do it the best I can via this virtual space. And I'm like trying to reach in through the camera to help as much as possible, but there are limitations. So it's been a tough year and a half for sure. Does that sort of answer it? I'm not happy about it. Let's just put it that way.
I understand.
Yeah. There's nothing like face to face. And that's how I was taught. So, there's just really no replacing it.
Hopefully soon.
Sorry, as I started this, somebody across the street is doing their lawn. So if you hear white noise, it's me. Typical. This is under the Palmetto in Doral. And again, I'm, sort of coming away from the fully architectural integrating that's very flat geometry to like, hey, let me look for these situations that have this novelty that I haven't seen yet, that I'm trying to combine, this nature creeping in, this idea that, yeah, this is a very man-made thing, but I happen to see it with an opening to the nature behind it. So I love the duality of that. And this is just a happy accident.
Beautiful.
But I knew that, so I often will like stalk a place that I see, and then I know that I want to come back there at a certain time because I know the light, you could just easily cross-reference that by, using maps and knowing, the cardinal, rules. And so I knew I wanted to come to this on a certain, light. And when I got there, it was sort of rainy and that rainbow was there. And I didn't see the rainbow until I actually got out of my car and stood to get the wall. And so I was like, damn it, there's a rainbow. It's going to ruin my picture because I don't want any kind of frills. But then I was like, you know what? I don't have a rainbow, so let's do it. And again, with these highway hieroglyphics that are just like really a good play on art and pop art, and also the notion of dividing and isolation.
Most of these photos were done in, I think you had mentioned to me 2019, 20, and 21, correct?
Yeah, now I'm in so I should have said like all of these are in the show. Okay,
Mhm.
so these are the ones over the last few years.
Yeah.
This is a 2021 piece. And this is over in Kendall. They actually made a portion of the wall glass or some kind of acrylic, which is really trippy because I don't know if it's for us, the drivers, or the golfers that want to see the cars. So I knew I had to get it. So that was another, jump out of the car and set up a tripod. So if you see me on the road, honk, but try not to hit me. I'm usually in pretty dangerous areas. Well, not dangerous, just I shouldn't be standing here.
On the road, right? It is dangerous. This really speaks to what time we live in, I think, with that glass wall. We're all like talking to a screen, or we're all inside, or trying to look outside, be part of the
Not to
world.
mention the political
Mhm.
ideas of a wall these days.
Mhm.
And why would they put a sail boat in this wall? It's beyond me. And in downtown, there's a very famous Wyland mural. He's a famous seascape muralist, but it's so rusty now. I mean, it used to be really precious when he did it in the 80s, and now it's showing some age. And I thought that was kind of interesting. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with De Chirico. He's a surrealist painter, and he always would like add a little train in a lot of his paintings. And I thought I knew I wanted to get like a wall that had been demolished and crumbled into pieces. And, again, you stand there and you're like, oh, wow, look, the tri-rail shows up. Let me add it to the frame. And so that was my ode to De Chirico.
Now, Ivan, you don't augment any of these images.
Oh, right. Yeah. So yeah, it's so easy to to manipulate these days. And there's no way to tell whether I do or I don't. So I'll just say I don't, but I am cropping. So that's actually augmenting reality. This is all a lie. This is all virtual. This where I stand makes a huge difference. There could be, a hot dog stand next to this image, and people, having a good time at a concert or whatever. All that could be happening behind me. But yeah, do I do changes? I mean, I'll the most I'll do is like I'll dust things off if there's like especially with not especially just in film. Sometimes I'll get dust, and then so I'll use the rubber stamp and stuff like that to remove it. So, and the process of post-production changes the way the photograph looks from its native state. So whether it's film or digital, there is a little bit of being a chef in the kitchen and cooking the image the way you want it. But I try to, the bottom line is I'm looking to like try to make it look like you're not on drugs when you look at these photos, that you're looking at it the way it would sort of appear in real life, which is, again, it's so virtual at this point. The way we look at photographs, it's how it's how you process it, and hopefully these don't look like completely out of the gamut of what our eyes are used to seeing, if that sort of answers that question.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, it's like really tricky that the way it's framed. And this is now the closed Tiger Direct at the Mall of Americas on Flagler. And I just like the way that it said computers on the top. Under some highways, the intersection of the Palmetto and the 836. And again, I like a lot when a color photograph appears to be black and white. So that's what I'm trying to do here. And this is an International House of Pancakes by my house that is being wrapped by fumigators. And so this now goes back to what I was showing earlier, which is the Christo work, and how I thought there was a lot of parallel with that.
Can you talk about your experience with the Christo work since you lived here? Unfortunately, I wasn't here. Do you remember going down there and what was like for you and your family? And
well, we didn't like go to the islands. I just remember seeing them. The inspiration for this was like, I knew it was like subconsciously back there in my memory. But I also thought this worked with the idea of just finding, instead of showcasing a building, I could look at it and strip down of everything but just shape. So Christo just happens to be like something that we could add to the conversation, but I don't like, it wasn't like the main motivating factor, because I wasn't really trying to do that. I was trying to just look for these very deadpan and banal moments. And, it's some of them, there's so many that you could start like looking for them all the time. And I wanted to find the larger ones and ones that had something that triggered another sort of idea. Like, so if it said picture or frame, or I knew that the other frame for this one is that there's a cross, because this is a church. I ended up liking this one more, but I'm always looking for a more unique one, right? Like, So I will do homes often just to like as a, like a sort of sketch, but I'm really looking for a more extravagant building wrap at this point. And this one's
Love these.
yeah, this one's in the show, and it's by Dadeland Mall, and it was pretty recent. And yeah, I just love that there's horizontal, there's vertical stripes. I could have easily just stood in front of it and done, like a more cropped scene, but I found that it was a garage across the street, and it's hard to tell in this image, but that's the roof of a car, and I really enjoy that there's a little bit of bush and car in the actual photo. And then this area next to the airport that had a billboard that I went to go photograph because I thought the billboard was really funny. And then at the end, I just didn't want to even include the billboard. So I thought this was like just so green and lush and just weeds that the actual photo for me is to ignore the billboard. And this is the last one. So that is the conclusion of the slides I have for you.
So can you talk about a little bit about when did you start taking photographs? When did you realize this was your calling or you wanted to be an artist? How did that start?
I guess, I started late, actually. I ignored any skill that I had just because I was really into music in like high school. And sort of in my senior year, I had a good art teacher, and it got me sort of interested in using, painting and drawing as a form of expression. And then it wasn't until college that I thought, man, I think I like photography. I had several great teachers, and yeah, I mean, I just liked the exact, the way that film at that time, because it was all film, no digital, the way that it reproduced the world, and I got seduced by the reality of it. But then I realized it's not about that later on.
Do you work in other mediums?
No, not really. I dabble in using these new cameras now to make films and stuff, but no, I've been stuck to this for a while.
I have a question here. I have a comment. So the comment is, I really enjoy the static nature of your work of a city that is ever changing. There's a sense of comfort that a local Miamian can relate to. I see so much of my city and my neighborhood. How do you feel about shooting other city places rather than Miami?
That's a great question. I was like immediately like, yeah, that's what I'm actually trying to document, a little bit of this history. When I go elsewhere, I feel like such a tourist. I mean, I try, but I know that I'm not like aware of what's new, what's old. And I could already tell from like some of the earlier works that I have, like these places are gone, or, this is like ancient, history to this city. The city is ever shifting. So do I have, everything? I actually get upset that I like miss out on certain things like Brickell. The other day I just went to the Brickell City Center, and I'm like, what happened here? That happened so fast that I never found the opportunity to document that area. And I know downtown also, I've been sticking a lot to this sort of suburban dystopia, but I I know that that part of Miami is in the larger context of the city, it's all just changing so fast that there is a desire for me to try to like hold on to this past. And photography does do that very well. You could come back and look at old works, and it's a historical moment. But then again, I'm not really documenting properly. Like kind of abstracting and pretty loose about what's important.
I have another comment. I've tried to take pictures inspired by Santiago's work, and it's not easy, making them very special. Also, he has a very series of mattresses.
Oh,
That was interesting. I didn't hear about that.
That's somebody I know. That's for sure. There's a lot of different little things that I got into, especially in undergrad. I was looking for different themes, and I found at a certain point in my life that people would often just throw away furniture and leave it outside of their house. So I didn't share it here because, you know, we don't have the time for everything, but I do have like a good amount of like mattresses in the middle of nowhere, and that idea of like things that are inside the house, outside the house, and they're in a different role, and they're discarded in their discarded roles. So I had a lot of things that were trash, boats. I liked to do a lot of boats that were just sitting on the side of roads. That kind of felt like a Noah's Ark kind of thing, especially in the city that soon will be underwater, they say. So yeah, those ideas of things that are thrown away became a lot of my work in undergrad.
I have another great question. Are you a optimist or a pessimist, and how does that show in your work?
No comment.
I think you're an optimist.
Yeah, most of my friends would say you're probably wrong. So I'm just gonna
Oh,
say,
really? Okay, I don't know you that well then.
yeah, I agree with you though.
Okay, okay. Well, what a wonderful presentation. Thank you so much. We're out of time, but I would like to open it up for everyone. If you'd like to unmute and say hi. Let me see if I can get that going. Give me a second. It was great working with you on the exhibition. I encourage everyone to come out and see it. It is going to be open until October 29th. It's a beautiful exhibition in our design gallery, so I hope everyone has an opportunity to see it. So I just unmuted everyone, I think, if everybody could just say hi. Hi, Ivan.
Oh, Roxy, is that you?
Yeah, bravo.
Oh, thank you.
Congratulations.
Hi, Ivan.
How embarrassing.
Great work, great work. So
Thank
beautiful.
you.
Congrats, Ivan, you pessimist.
Ivan, you better answer that question.
Well, are you saying that is a question about the art or me?
I just asked you the question. You can't ask me any questions about it. You just have to
Don't
answer.
listen to her. Stay an enigma, Ivan.
Well,
Well, we are living in some scary times.
Yeah, I think the work can be looked at as pessimistic for what happens when you just haphazardly build up and just sprawl, right? The city sprawls and tears down nature in its process. Am I optimistic of the city changing? There's little things here and there that are really cool and neat about this town. But yeah, this city is like every other city. It's going through a major growth spurt.
Well, I think that the work has a very complicated implication of some sort of pessimism, but not real heavy because they're gorgeous. And, you know, I mean, I've seen your work for a long time, but I really thought about it now. And I think that it's important to look at it now.
Great observation, Peggy. Thank you. So everyone, thank you again for joining us. Thank you, Ivan. I look forward to seeing you all again at another talk. Next week, we have Alessandra Mandolfi. She is a artist who works in activism. So she'll be talking about her practice. So thank you again, everyone, for joining us. Take care. Stay safe.